Elias woke up to the soft hum of machinery around him, his body aching in places he didn't know existed. His vision blurred for a moment, and when it cleared, he found himself staring at the unfamiliar ceiling of a strange room. The air smelled sterile, but also oddly comforting. There were no sounds of the usual hustle and bustle that he was accustomed to on the mission. This wasn't a place he had ever imagined being, and the realization hit him all at once. His hand reached for his head, feeling the bandages wrapped around it. He was alive. That was the first thing that came to his mind. Alive, but why? He tried to piece together what had happened before he passed out, but the memories came in fragments. There was an explosion, the intense heat, a blast that knocked him off his feet. Then everything went black. A soft click of footsteps approached his bed, and Elias turned his head slowly. Standing by his side was a figure, tall, thin, and unlike any being he had seen before. She was dressed in a uniform made of what looked like silver fabric, smooth and almost glowing in the dim light. Her skin was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes were an eerie, glowing shade of purple. She looked human, but something about her was distinctly alien. Elias blinked, trying to process what he was seeing. She stood there for a moment unmoving, her eyes scanning him, but her face showed no sign of emotion. "Where am I?" Elias croaked, his throat dry and scratchy. His voice sounded weak, nothing like the confident diplomat he was known to be. But the woman didn't respond immediately. Instead, she looked at him, her gaze soft but distant, almost like she was considering whether to speak. "Who are you?" Elias tried again, a little more forcefully. "What happened?" Still, there was silence. The alien nurse's expression remained neutral, her eyes avoiding his. He frowned, the confusion growing within him. There was something unsettling about the way she avoided his gaze. It wasn't out of fear. No, it was something else, something far deeper. It felt like she was holding something back, something she wasn't ready to share. Elias tried to sit up, but his body protested with sharp pains that shot through him, reminding him of the injuries he had sustained. His head throbbed and he could feel the tender bruises on his arms. He didn't know how badly he was hurt, but it was clear that whatever had happened, it had left him in a fragile state. "Please," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "tell me where I am." The nurse took a step closer, her movements slow and deliberate. She didn't say anything at first, just watched him, her violet eyes now fixed on the floor. It was as if she were deep in thought, unsure of how to proceed. Elias waited, growing increasingly frustrated with the silence. "I'm a human," he said, almost as if stating the obvious. "I've been to many planets, but I've never seen anyone like you. Are you even real?" The question hung in the air between them, and for the briefest of moments, Elias saw a flicker of something in her eyes, something almost human, a flicker of emotion. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. She stepped back slightly, giving him space but still not answering. "Are you going to leave me here to die?" Elias asked, the words slipping out before he could stop them. He didn't mean to sound so harsh, but the uncertainty in his chest was growing. The silence was maddening. He just wanted answers. He needed to know why he was here, why he had been saved, and most importantly, if he had a chance to survive. The nurse shifted her weight, the only movement she had made in what seemed like an eternity. Her gaze flickered to him, but it never quite met his eyes. And then, as if on instinct, Elias found himself asking, "Do I have a chance?" The words came out without thinking, his tone heavy with a mix of exhaustion and raw fear. It wasn't just about his physical recovery. No, it was deeper than that. Elias wanted to know if he had a chance at life, at survival, at making sense of whatever had happened and why he was still breathing when others might not be. She didn't answer right away, and Elias couldn't help but feel a wave of frustration. Was he being ignored? Was he just another patient to her? Did his life mean nothing to her? But still, she remained silent, her eyes fixed on some distant point, avoiding his gaze completely. And then, just as Elias thought she would never speak, she whispered almost to herself, "It's not about chances." Her voice was soft, the words laced with an unspoken sorrow. "It's about what you've left behind." Elias blinked, trying to understand. Left behind. What was she talking about? He wanted to push her further, ask more questions, but the words caught in his throat. Something in her tone stopped him. Something told him that the truth was not so simple. She reached down and adjusted the monitor beside his bed, her hands steady and professional. Her face was still as unreadable as ever, but something in her posture seemed different, more distant, almost guarded. He wondered if it was a cultural thing. Perhaps she couldn't bear to look him in the eye, not out of discomfort, but because of something far more complex. "I'm sorry," Elias muttered, unsure of why he felt the need to apologize. He was the one who was hurt, the one who had been nearly killed. Yet there he was, feeling the weight of the nurse's silence. "I didn't mean to upset you." But she didn't respond. Her focus was entirely on the medical equipment around him. It was clear that she had her own way of doing things, and Elias was just a patient to her, just another face among many. Elias lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling again. He could hear the soft beeping of the heart monitor, the quiet buzz of the machines. He wondered how long he had been out. What had happened to his team? Were they safe? Was his mission a failure? And most of all, he couldn't shake the feeling that the nurse wasn't telling him everything. Something was off. She was hiding something. But what? His mind raced as he drifted in and out of consciousness. His body still ached, but the questions lingered like shadows in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more the silence between them gnawed at him. It was a silence that felt like it held the answers to questions he hadn't yet asked. And perhaps, just perhaps, the answers were not what he expected. But that was a thought for later. For now, Elias had to focus on surviving. And in the back of his mind, he couldn't stop wondering, did he have a chance? The days passed slowly for Elias. Every day, he woke to the same sterile smell of the medical facility, the same dull hum of the machines surrounding him. He had grown used to the pain, to the quiet emptiness of the room he was kept in. But what he hadn't gotten used to was the alien nurse, Selra. She still avoided looking him in the eye, still kept a professional distance, and still said very little. At first, Elias had tried to talk to her. He would ask about his recovery, about the place he was in, about what had happened to his team and the mission. But every time he spoke, she gave him the same detached responses. "You are recovering," she would say. "Your injuries are being treated." Nothing more. She was efficient, clinical even, but there was an emotional barrier between them, one that no amount of conversation seemed to break. Her face remained expressionless, her movements calm and precise, like a machine. But it wasn't the coldness that bothered Elias. It was the silence that followed her actions, the way her eyes never seemed to meet his for more than a second. It felt as if she were hiding something, something that she was unwilling to share. Elias found himself growing restless. He spent his time lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering about the alien world outside the medical facility. He had been told he was on a peaceful planet, a place where humans and aliens coexisted in relative harmony, but it felt so far removed from everything he knew. He was alone here, a stranger in a strange land, and the only company he had was Selra. One evening, after what felt like hours of lying awake, Elias decided to take a chance. He needed answers, and he had to know more about the nurse who was caring for him. He had tried to ask before, but now he felt more desperate. He couldn't let the silence swallow him whole. "Selra," he called softly, his voice hoarse from days of disuse. She didn't answer right away, and for a moment Elias thought she might ignore him. But then she turned, her violet eyes briefly meeting his before darting away again. "Yes." Her voice was calm, almost too calm. She had a certain serenity in her tone that made Elias feel even more uneasy. "I don't understand," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Why do you avoid looking at me? What is it that you're not telling me? She didn't respond right away. Instead, she walked over to one of the monitors at the side of his bed, adjusting the settings with practiced ease. Her hands moved quickly, but her eyes never left the screen in front of her. Elias could see the way her jaw tightened, the slight tension in her shoulders. It was the first sign of emotion he had seen from her, even if it was subtle. "I don't avoid you," she said finally, her voice low. "I avoid the connection." Elias frowned, not fully understanding what she meant. "Connection? What do you mean by that?" Selra paused, and for a moment, Elias thought she might leave without explaining further. But then she turned to face him again, her eyes meeting his for the briefest of moments before she looked away once more. "I can't let myself connect with you," she said quietly. "Not in the way you think." Elias stared at her, his confusion growing. "But why? I'm just a patient to you, right? It's your job to help me get better, isn't it?" She nodded, but her eyes were distant, as if she were somewhere far away in her mind. "It's not that simple," she said, her voice carrying an edge of sadness. "My people, we have a way of connecting with others, but it's not like yours. When we make a connection, we feel everything, every emotion, every memory. It's overwhelming and it's painful." Elias' mind raced as he tried to process what she was saying. "You feel what I feel, everything." Selra nodded again, this time more slowly. "Yes, I feel your pain, your fear, your anger, and in return you would feel mine. It's a bond that is hard to break once it's formed. It's why I avoid you." Elias was quiet for a long time, letting her words sink in. He had always known that aliens were different, but this was something he hadn't expected. To be able to feel what someone else felt, to experience their emotions as if they were his own, it was both beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Is it always like this?" he asked, his voice softer now. "Does everyone feel this way?" "No," Selra replied, her voice barely a whisper. "Not everyone. Only those like me. We are called the empathy. We are born with the ability to connect with others on a deep, emotional level, but it's not something we can control easily. The bond can be overwhelming and it can break us if we let it." Elias could see the weight in her words, the sorrow that lingered just beneath the surface. She was carrying something, something she hadn't shared with him. And he realized in that moment that her silence wasn't just about avoiding him. It was about protecting herself from the flood of emotions she would feel if she allowed herself to connect with him. He took a deep breath, his mind racing with the new understanding. "So you've been avoiding me because you don't want to feel what I'm feeling?" "Yes," she replied, her voice quiet. "But it's not just about me. It's about you too. You are human, Elias. Your emotions, your experiences, they are so different from mine. And when we connect, we don't just share our feelings. We share our pain, our fears, our hopes, everything. It can be too much to bear." Elias leaned back against the bed, his mind swirling with everything she had told him. He understood now why she had been so distant, so detached. It wasn't that she didn't care. It was that caring came with a price, one that neither of them was ready to pay. But as he lay there, thinking about her words, something inside him stirred. There was a part of him that wanted to reach out, to connect with her in a way that was deeper than just being patient and caregiver. He had spent so much time feeling lost, disconnected from everything. The thought of someone, anyone feeling what he felt, understanding him on a level beyond words was both comforting and frightening. "You don't have to be afraid of me," Elias said quietly, his voice soft. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to understand. I want to know what's going on. I want to know why you're doing this, why you're keeping your distance." Selra looked at him then, really looked at him for the first time in what felt like forever. Her eyes met his, and in that instant, Elias saw something in her expression that he hadn't seen before: vulnerability. It was fleeting, gone as soon as it had appeared, but it was enough to make him realize that there was more to her than he had thought. "I'm not afraid of you, Elias," she said softly, "but I am afraid of what might happen if I let myself feel everything you're feeling. I've seen it happen before. The bond can break people. It can destroy them. Elias reached out, his hand hovering just above hers. Then let me help you. Let me show you that it doesn't have to be that way. For a long moment, neither of them moved. But as he looked into her eyes, Elias saw a flicker of something, a glimmer of hope maybe. It wasn't much, but it was enough. I don't know if I can, she whispered, her voice barely audible, but I'll try. And in that moment, Elias knew that they had taken the first step toward something deeper. Something that neither of them fully understood, but something that could change everything. Elias spent the next few days in a state of quiet anticipation. The weight of Selra's words lingered in his mind, but so did the small spark of hope. The more they spoke, the more Elias understood the depth of her burden. To connect with others the way she did, to feel their pain as if it were her own, was both a gift and a curse. It was a struggle she carried alone, and yet he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she was still holding back. Despite their conversations, their moments of connection, the silence between them never fully disappeared. She had opened up, yes, but only just enough for Elias to see the edges of her soul. There were parts of her, parts that even she had yet to acknowledge, that remained hidden, and Elias understood. He understood the walls she had built around herself, the protective distance she maintained. It was easier to stay distant, easier to avoid the pain that came with true connection, but it was also lonely. And Elias could see that loneliness in her eyes, despite her calm exterior. One evening, as the soft hum of the facility filled the air, Elias sat up in his bed and turned toward Selra, who was tending to the medical equipment at the far side of the room. He watched her for a long moment before finally speaking. "Do you ever wish things were different?" he asked, his voice low. She froze for a moment, her hands still on the medical instruments, and then she slowly turned to face him. Her expression was unreadable, but Elias could see the flicker of emotion in her eyes. "I wish I could be different," she said softly, almost to herself. "I wish I could be like you, to feel without being overwhelmed, to connect without losing myself in it." Elias didn't respond immediately. He didn't know what to say. He couldn't imagine what it must be like for her, to constantly live with the weight of other people's emotions pressing down on her. It was a burden, one that he could see in her every movement. "You don't have to carry it alone, you know," he said finally, his voice steady. "I'm here, Selra. I'm not going anywhere." She looked at him for a long time, her eyes searching his face as if trying to understand him. He saw the conflict in her gaze, the desire to reach out, but the fear of what that might mean, the fear of what might happen if she allowed herself to feel everything he felt. "I've been alone for a long time," she said quietly, "long before you came here. I've learned to keep my distance, to protect myself from the pain, but the more I talk to you, the more I realize that maybe it's okay to feel." Elias' heart beat faster as her words sank in. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe there was a chance for her, for both of them, to find something more than silence. "You don't have to protect yourself from me," Elias said gently. "I won't hurt you, I promise." Her eyes softened just slightly, and for the first time since he had met her, Elias saw a flicker of something real, a glimmer of trust. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give him hope. "I want to believe you," Selra whispered, "but I'm afraid." "Afraid of what?" Elias asked, his voice low and earnest. "Afraid of losing control," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Afraid of what might happen if I let myself connect with you. I've seen what it does to others. It breaks them. It takes away who they are." Elias reached out, his hand hovering just above hers. He could see the tension in her shoulders, the fear that still clung to her. But there was something else too, something he had seen before deep within her, a yearning to break free from the isolation she had created for herself. "You won't lose yourself with me," he said softly. "I won't let you. We can take it slow, one step at a time. But we have to try, we have to give this a chance." She hesitated for a long time, her eyes fixed on his hand. Elias didn't push her. He simply waited, giving her the space she needed. He understood the importance of this moment. She had lived her life in silence, surrounded by the weight of others' emotions. But now she had a choice. A choice to let go of the walls she had built and trust someone enough to connect. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Selra slowly reached out and took his hand. The touch was tentative, but it was enough. Elias felt a spark of warmth spread through his chest, a feeling of connection that was new and unfamiliar. It wasn't overwhelming, not like she had feared. It was just human, simple. And for the first time, Elias felt like he wasn't alone. "I don't know if I can do this," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't have to do it alone," Elias replied. "We'll do it together." For a long time they sat in silence, their hands still joined. The hum of the facility, the soft beeping of the medical monitors, all faded into the background. In that moment, nothing else mattered. There was no mission, no questions about the future. There was only the present, only the quiet connection between them. Elias could feel her emotions now, but it wasn't overwhelming. It wasn't the crushing weight he had imagined. Instead, it was like a shared breath, a gentle exchange of feelings that brought them closer together. It was real, but it didn't break him. It didn't break her either. Selra closed her eyes for a moment, letting the connection settle between them. When she opened them again, she looked at Elias with a mixture of uncertainty and wonder. "I don't know what comes next," she said softly, "but I want to find out. With you." Elias smiled, a sense of peace washing over him. "We'll figure it out, together." The silence between them was no longer oppressive. It wasn't filled with the weight of unspoken words or hidden emotions. It was just two people, connected in a way that neither had expected but both had hoped for. And for the first time since he had woken up in this strange place, Elias felt like he had a chance. Not just at survival, but at something deeper, something more meaningful. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, moments when the weight of their connection threatened to overwhelm them both. But with each passing day, they learned to trust one another, to open up in ways they hadn't before. Selra began to share more of herself with Elias, revealing the struggles of her people, the burden they carried with their ability to connect. Elias listened, not just with his ears, but with his heart. He understood now that the connection they shared wasn't just about him. It was about both of them, learning to navigate the complexities of their emotions and finding a way to make it work. And as the time passed, as Elias' body healed and his mind found peace, he knew one thing for certain. The connection they had found was worth the risk. It was worth the fear, worth the uncertainty. Because in the end, they had something that no one could take away, something real. When the day finally came for Elias to leave the medical facility, he felt a sense of sadness in his chest. He wasn't ready to say goodbye to Selra, to the quiet bond they had built, but he knew it was time. He had his mission to return to, and she had her people to care for. But there was no longer any doubt in his mind. He turned to her, his heart full of gratitude. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything." Selra gave him a soft smile, her eyes filled with a quiet understanding. "You gave me a chance, Elias. You showed me that I don't have to be afraid, and for that I will always be grateful." As he stepped out into the bright light of the alien world, Elias looked back one last time, knowing that this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something new, and no matter where life took him, he would always carry the connection they had forged together. A connection that had saved them both.